So that's what Vans did with skateboarding. Red Bull did that with extreme sport. Nike did that with athletes. So with Gymshark, we just realized, well,
For the next hour, Samba will share over a decade of marketing genius.
jab, 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 right hook theory. Like five, it's always the same five. He has a philosophy about, I labeled it as the 3 A's. And that's where it went even crazier because
As head of social for Gymshark, he helped them become a global icon in 7 years.
we were not selling clothes, we were telling stories. People are wearing Under Armour tops with like Puma bottoms and Nike shoes. There was no uniform for the gym. That's the best thing to ever happen to me because one, I realized that we should never fucking do this again. And two, I realized that
And he's got insights from working with the biggest and the best.
what's Michael Jackson with Pepsi? What's Michael Jordan with Nike? That's all influencer marketing. There's a reason why Ryanair can get away with things that British Airways can't. Once people start to realize that all I need to do is,
This is a marketing masterclass from Samba.
I completely disagree with them.
Make sure you subscribe so we can continue to get bigger and bigger guests. This episode was powered by LinkedIn. More on them later in the show. Welcome to the show. We're going to chat loads. Now, on your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as a community-first marketeer. And I wondered if you could explain what that job is.
Oh yeah, I think, and whenever people ask me what I do, I say that I scale community for brands and people, right? That's the service that I give, right? It's not necessarily who I am, but so what I mean by that is, I think when you look at the current state of marketing, it's always been this approach of trying to be something to everybody instead of being everything to somebody, right? Okay. And I feel like that deep level of connection is the way to scale, well, since especially the last 15 years. I think a lot of the times people think that it's all about reach and getting to as many people as possible. You can do that, but the way you do that, there's an art to that, right? And when you look at just like trust scores, people tend to trust. I think it's like 88%. There was a Nielsen study that said 88% of people trust recommendations from other people other than hearing from the brand themselves.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it makes logical sense to mean a lot to a core community group that then tells everybody else about you.
Yeah.
And therefore, you're more likely to be trusted because it hasn't come from yourself. It's like me going around to everybody and telling them that I'm a nice guy, right?
Yeah.
You're more likely to trust it if it came from yourself or somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And I'm basically trying to do that at scale for brands because when you listen to Noel Mack, Chief Brand Officer at Gymshark, he says the reason why Gymshark was successful is because more people talk about Gymshark than Gymshark itself. And that's because we focus on making a core group of people's experience so incredible that they share the experience of everybody else, and therefore you create this flywheel that therefore generates scale. So that's what I specialize in.
And how did it change over the years at Gymshark, right? Because you were there for sort of close to a decade. Like, what were the different phases that kind of community went through?
So there was an interesting insight that on Ben's birthday, every age that he got to was the average age of our consumer at one given point, right? So I guess the story there or the insight there is that the team, Ben, Dan, Lewis, the early lot, they basically were just doing what was native to themselves, right? They're like they didn't have any money to pay for the IFBB Pro champions, the Mr. Olympias, etc. They were listening to YouTubers, right? So they invited Matt Ogis and Lavado over from America with whatever they had and some other influencers, now they call it, that were local. And they said, well, come to this experience with us at Body Power Expo in Birmingham. And not only did they sell a lot of T-shirts because people were big fans of them, they also after that went for a workout and then to a Nando's, and then the people that were there seemed to follow, right?
Yeah.
And then they just basically were a mirror to the bodybuilding community that was building up from that. But it was young lads and stringers initially, right? And then because these were American lads and stringers, that's what the audience was. And then we got to a point, I think it was around 2016, where still 95% of the audience was male and only 5% was women. And we got a brilliant women's product team that came in, but our storytelling was still very, very male orientated. We actually were going to shut down Gymshark Women at one point because there were just a bunch of like guys pretending to know how to appeal to a female audience. And going back to the whole ethos of being a mirror to the community that you represent, I decided to just start listening. I said, you know what? We have some female athletes. We have female audiences in our comment section. What are they engaging with? How are they speaking? And then I went through this like weird method acting phase where I would put on Beyonce and I'll start to like embody the tone of voice of the audience, right? And then lo and behold, you stop putting people in idealistic situations and you start taking the gym sets and laying it out in like a visually aesthetic way and people start to like it. You stop using high-end cameras, you start using phones, people seem to like it. And you're like, okay, what we are is a vehicle for their own imagination. They want our content to make them feel like they're there. Our content makes them feel like they're part of our world and our experience. So it's not about having one athlete in isolation. It's about having a crew and you wanting to be a part of that crew. It's about seeing what the product unlocks and you wanting that for yourself. So it's not about us, it's about them, right? And once you start to understand that, and as you grow, and you start to say, okay, so how is the community navigating? We would have some people that would buy a hoodie and then they chop it up, and we had crop tops, right? So that we were just listening, right? We're like, okay, and it's very fascinating. The closest thing, you see it in different areas, but the closest and most recent example that I've seen this is with a Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix, right? Now, Vince has a lot of controversial stuff, but there's also brilliance in there, which is he always listens to the crowd. And if the crowd wants something, he's going to give it to them. That's effectively all we did. We said, okay, this is who we are, and that's not negotiable, but the rest is all about our community. And how can we make sure that we demonstrate that we've listened and make sure that all of our innovation, all of our storytelling comes from the community and then comes goes back to the organization, as opposed to us forcing messages down and creating these scenarios that don't really exist.
And what was your first job title at Gymshark?
Yeah, so it was basically I was like a digital exec. So it was a generic title, but I was focused on social, right?
Yeah.
And how I got my job was I heard about Gary Vaynerchuk and his jab, 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 right hook theory. And then I was like, okay. And that's all about give, and then ask. So I said, okay, who's going to be my first victim, right? And I wanted to be a Gymshark athlete just like everybody that was living in Birmingham. But then also I wanted to work there because they seemed to be the only people that understood the social media space that I was talking about. But I was like, I think I saw a job ad from Gymshark on LinkedIn and there was like 650 people that have applied for it. And I was like, I'm never going to go get their attention. They don't know who I am. So what I did was I decided to add everybody that worked there and I started to put out content about like, I think I wrote an article about the fact that there's no longer B2B and B2C. We're just human to human right now. And also the fact how most brands are running before they've learned how to walk. And I just like simplified the whole process. I think they thought I was crazy enough that I might do something at the organization, right? I got invited in for an interview. It was with Dan Knight, who was the marketing manager at the time, and Ben himself. They asked me one question. I just like took over the interview. One, I got too excited, and I just wanted to make sure that I demonstrated how passionate I was about what they were building and that I knew the audience, et cetera, et cetera. But really, it started out, I don't think that my role changed. The community just got bigger. So I didn't get to do my job for the first month because it was the Black Friday where everything broke down. That was 2015. That was my first week. But I spent about a month in customer experience responding to people. That's the best thing to ever happen to me because one, I realized that we should never fucking do this again. Two, I realized that this audience genuinely cares about the brand. And my role is to be at the intersection of what the brand wants and what the community wants. And as we go bigger, I need to make sure that we stay as close to that community as possible, because they're gonna ones that are gonna take us the long yard, right? So as we got bigger, my goal was to just like stay right here,
Yeah.
right? And make sure that it doesn't feel like we have an identity crisis, and make sure that we are growing, but we're doing it in a very systematic and controlled way that made sense, right? And basically, you would say that the social team at Gymshark, by the time I left, felt like Monaco to France, right? So it was like we had our own space, and if you wanted to know about Gymshark, Noel, Ben will be like, go talk to Elf, and that was my role.
But so you talk about customer experience there, spending time in it as well,
Yeah.
and it's like immediately think, oh, that's like sort of it's funny how status kind of like impacts. You think, oh, customer experience, dealing with complaints, not sort of the high end of it, whereas community manager does feel much more sort of up there. It's just an interesting kind of description. So when were you? How many people were there when you joined?
So 24 in the office, in the main office, and then there was still the warehouse, which is still in Bromsgrove at the time. So 24 people. Everybody, like everyone was named after their department, basically, right? We had Saz, who came in right after me, who was email and CRM, right?
Yeah.
Like I was social. Like I remember there was actually some controversy within the Gymshark office when they heard that I was hired. And everybody, I think Noel mentioned, you guys are going to hire a whole person to do social media. That's how like early it was, and that's how native it was for everybody. Because think about the atmosphere that I'm going into. Like everybody from the founder of the organization to the accountant is young, and therefore feels like they know how to do social.
Yeah.
And the truth is they do, because they had 1 million followers at the time. They had an £8 million business at the time. They were local cult heroes, right? Like people loved them.
Yeah.
And here's me coming on, university boy, came from the university space. I've never sold leggings and gym stringers in my life. I was part of the community, but this is my first go at actually trying to take my theory and turn it into practice. It was almost like when Arsene Wenger went to Arsenal and they were like, Arsene who, right? So I'm here coming in with like my ideas and the idea of how we do storytelling and campaigns and how we systemize things and how we start to use data. That is foreign language to the team, right?
Yeah.
And I had to win that respect and trust, right? And I guess spending a month listening, but then also the first 3 months, I was lucky the first month, some of my content was working. And then I'd lost the audience a little bit because I was trying to elevate the brand to feel more like a Nike, Adidas, a Puma. But then I realized that that's not the reason why people love Gymshark. They love Gymshark because it's a mirror, right? It's a reflection of them.
Yeah.
And it's a pulse of the community at a given moment of time. And when I understood that, that's when I realized that Gymshark reflects the current state of the fitness community. And that's what our content should always be. And that's who our representatives should always be. And that's where our story should come from, right?
Yeah.
And it's just about listening and being involved in it, man. Like going to the stores, speaking to people, listening to what's happening, being aware of people that are within the category, creators that are within the category, but also creators out of the category. How are they creating and connecting with their audiences and constantly evolving, right? Constantly evolving and bringing newness and energy. I was actually speaking to Noel this morning. I was watching some of our old YouTube videos, right? And I realized that the top 20 most watched videos, about like 90% were all from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was just basically like, we were not selling clothes. We were telling stories. We were bringing almost like art to an industry that was seen as like brute and like about like posing and being vain, and we brought that to this industry, right? And because you always start to think like, why do people love the brand so much? It's because they loved the care, the storytelling, the almost like responsibility of being the custodians of an industry. And we did that at a very young age. We didn't know what we were doing, but when you look at it after the fact, it seems like it all fell into place.
Yeah, of course. But it was also an industry that was growing massively as well, right?
Yeah.
Like gym, just generally, like healthcare, you know, in the 90s wasn't around that much. And then like in the noughties, basically it exploded. One of the other things you have on your LinkedIn profile, which is quite interesting, is you help brands scale their cultural relevance.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack that and what that means? Because I think that's super interesting.
So I guess what I mean by that, I think the world the word culture now is starting to get overused. I probably should change that, right? But the word culture is starting to get overused because a lot of people use it now as a throwaway to be given the permission to do something that's cool, right?
Yeah.
But really what culture is about how people see themselves, what they belong to, and how they see commonality, right? Like what are the rules of commonality amongst a particular group, right? And I always say to people that when a brand is looking to build a community, like no one's born wanting to be part of the community of a brand, right? Communities already exist. You just have to find one that's most aligned with your brand values, hopefully one that's on the rise and has no representation, right? So that's what Vans did with skateboarding, right? They found a community that represented what they wanted to do. It was on the rise. There was no other competitors, and they doubled down on it. Red Bull did that with extreme sports, right? Like Nike did that with athletes. Well, Adidas did it first, and then they copied it in the US, right? So with Gymshark, we just realized, well, everybody's going to the gym. Gym is on the rise. First and foremost, like everybody in the UK was wearing like top man t-shirts, 2 for £12 that were like fitted with skinny jeans. But then why is it that I couldn't find the same fitting clothing in my gym, in the gym?
Yeah.
And then, well, they have it in America and it's bodybuilding, but then we don't have it here. Why don't we fuse that together? And then we're like, okay, well, now there's these YouTubers that we're a part of, but then like no brand will touch them. People are wearing Under Armour tops with like Puma bottoms and Nike shoes. There was no uniform for the gym, right?
Yeah.
So all Gymshark did was apply uniform and unity to demonstrate that we're all from the same space, right? And then they did that with women. And that's where it went even crazier, because even though the fitness community from a male's perspective was there, it was at a very political state, right? It was only the new generation that was coming in, those under 21, that were open to this world. But in the female fitness bodybuilding category was not a thing back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was actually pretty controversial. Like what we would get in the comment section was crazy. But now we turned something that people thought was like, not barbaric, but was like very like just purely masculine, and we turned it into something beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And that just came with because we felt that the people that were within the industry were amazing people, and their stories deserve to be told in the best way possible. So going back to your question, it's about understanding who is the brand in its core essence and matchmaking it with the community that exists out there that's best fit.
Yeah.
But then making sure that the bridge between the brand and that community, from the storytelling to the products to the actions that it takes, is authentic. That's how we do it.
That is really interesting on the Vans and the skateboarders, Red Bull Extreme Sports. Have you got any more examples of that?
Let me get Supreme and hip hop culture,
Yeah.
right? Another example of that. Let me find another.
Put you on the spot. You used all the good ones in your.
Well, if you look at like Salad Project,
Yeah.
right? It's like salad. You couldn't pay me to eat a salad at one point, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't like. Yeah, the health benefits are cool, but I love Nando's, right? But like, it's now they understood that we gotta make eating salads cool. We gotta make it attach it to like the current state of like culture. Now, I think I was at a meeting with somebody and they said people are delivering like 27-pound salads.
Yeah.
And then like there's another brand called Honest Greens that I was with in Spain, and it's amazing. And I'm like, these guys have basically said, you know what? Instead of trying to make the marketing the fact that the food is healthy, let's understand why people gather and like eat at places in the first place. And let's embody, almost like let's connect to that, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll get people eating more healthy food because it's aligned with how they live their life, right? Like I think a lot of people try to force people down their way. You're actually much better to understand the path they're already going into and slotting yourself into that in the most authentic way possible. And it happens everywhere.
You mentioned politics beforehand,
Yeah.
and I was just curious as to, obviously, Gymshark, very apolitical brand, and most brands generally want to be seen as apolitical. But how do you think politics has sort of changed our culture? Because it strikes me that in the last 10 years, it's become a lot more sort of front and centre of our culture.
Is that our culture in general, or is that like Gymshark in specific?
More kind of UK, America
Yeah.
point.
So we spoke about this on the podcast with Rory Sutherland, for those that don't know.
The Bottleneck
The
podcast,
Bottleneck podcast. And we're just talking about the fact that people can no longer sit and have a conversation with somebody that has a completely different view to themselves. And where does it start from? I think it starts first and foremost from social platforms and how algorithms work, right? If you want to know a lot about somebody, go onto their Instagram and look at their explore page. If it's not the things that they like, it's the things that the people that they follow like and engage with, which therefore creates an echo chamber around your world. So when people don't see the world in the same view as yourself, you almost believe that everybody has the same feed, right?
Yeah.
And you believe that everybody believes the same thing. But not only is that echo chamber happening, people are now starting to attach it with themselves. It's like you don't look at policies for what they are and who it helps. You look at it for an identity.
Yeah.
Right? Now you embody what your decision is. That is part of your nature, even though you don't completely agree with everything. But then because you've committed to something, you have to like stick it through, right? And I feel like that's just made people just like go further and further apart, when really we're all trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But then that's why I believe that the antidote to that is lack of ignorance. It's openness. It's conversation. It's giving people the freedom to express themselves, and with the intention to listen and understand, not to judge, catastrophize, shame, any of that. It's like, I just feel like we've just lost the art of listening to people, right? It's just listen to people and then come up with your theory beyond that point. And I think that my North Star, or my compass, has always been, I'm going to hear people out. And the thing is, it wasn't always that way. I was very emotive about everything. I think it took time to be able to sit down. And I've always said that I could speak to somebody that I completely disagree with them, right? But there is a truth to them, right? Like they must believe.
Yeah.
The reason they believe in something must come from somewhere. We need to aim to understand that, right? They always say that the hero and the villain both come from the same source. The difference is the story they tell to themselves about the thing that happened. One says, I've gone through this, so nobody else needs to. The other says, I've gone through this, so the world has to pay, right?
Yeah.
But then it's only when we start to understand the source that we know how to rewire the storytelling. Otherwise, you just shame people for the outcome of what happened to them, right? And that's what I think we've lost in humanity.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like these sort of people taking issues and attaching themselves to it before having even kind of thought about what they actually think, rather than it is very...
But then also how people will think about them for how they think. That's becoming even more influential, right? If I'm seen, like, so the reason why I think a lot of people say, how was I able to like grow my LinkedIn audience? Because only 1% of people on LinkedIn actually post,
Yeah.
right? But why is that? It's not because they're not creatively inclined. It's because it's a track record. If you post something, your job, your CV is all there. You're on record. You can't just post shit, right? Whatever you post, whatever you like, is like everybody can see it. So now you have to be able to say things that you've researched. You have to say things that are factual. You have to say things that are not trying to just like harm people.
Yeah.
If you are going to go to a space when you're going to speak some truth, you better be ready for it. And I navigate pretty well within that space, right?
Yeah.
So I said that I'm going to commit to giving an idea a day, giving a perspective a day. And if you look at my sentiment, it's like 95% positive, even though I'm talking about topics that some would seem to be like, oh, don't go there. It's because I don't speak in opinion. It's not about my personal view on the thing, it's just what it is, right? And people seem to be okay with that logic, right? So
It's funny on LinkedIn, somebody was writing about swearing at work the other day and the kind of like importance of it. And I was going to write a comment underneath being like, fuck off, that's a shit point. But like, it was funny because I hit comment and then like, LinkedIn came up like with a pop-up thing being like, do you really want to say that? And I was like, oh God, I've never sworn on LinkedIn before, posted loads of times, but like it did have a proper kind of like reaction. I did wonder to myself, I was like, would we not be a bit better off if we had a bit of that on kind of like X and Instagram as well?
yeah. Would people say what they...
As we're talking about LinkedIn, a quick shout out to them as they've actually partnered with us on this episode. They've just released some interesting new research on small business with the hard data on a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this show. For example, people working in small businesses are actually growing their online networks faster than those in big companies. And 60% of small businesses now say that AI is critical to their growth. It sounds obvious, but it's good to have the data on it. There's also some great data on which countries have the most people changing their LinkedIn bio to founder. But I'll let you discover which country comes at the top by checking the report below. Right, back to the episode. I've never sworn on LinkedIn before, posted loads of times, but like it did have a proper kind of like reaction. I did wonder to myself, I was like, would we not be a bit better off if we had a bit of that on kind of like X and Instagram as well?
Yeah. Would people say what they... Would people say what they've said if you could see the whole entire like work history, who their boss is?
Yeah.
Would they say that, right? Because so I saw a funny meme the other day, and when you think about the role of sports, right? So my brother, who also was a Gymshark, he always comes up with these like very deeply insightful things, but he doesn't say it to be deep. He just says something, and I see the layers behind what people are saying. I think there was a recent riot, something that happened, but it was in this period when the football wasn't on. There was no Premier League, there was no international football. It was like a week period. And everybody was like in uproar. And then he said, no worries, everyone will calm down when the football's back. And I was like, well, hold on a second. So are you telling me that sports, entertainment, football, this is where my mind goes, has all been almost like constructed to keep us at peace and to create an enemy that's invisible so we don't fucking kill each other, right? So basically, you are arguing with a person who supports a rival team to you, who you will hug and potentially kiss because you both support the same international team. Do you know what I mean? So we've created this conflict that exists so that we can bring out our internal feelings of frustration. And I think that people use social media to do exactly the same thing, right? They're trying to find people, but they try to do it in secret, right? And to vent frustration. And that's what these things have been created to do, right? Which is why I try not to take this personally. It says more about the person commenting than it does about you.
Oh, completely right. I mean, I agree with that. So to time in on the football thing on 2 points on that. Interestingly, I found the pandemic when there wasn't football was actually really hard and weird.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I'm a big Derby County fan. Who do you follow?
So I am an Arsenal fan. By the way, my brother is called Derby, and he was named after Derby County.
Was he?
Yeah, my dad just randomly said, I love that name. I was like, there is no logic to it. No. Till one of the teams that got absolutely destroyed in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But my brother's named after that. So randomly, Derby Samba.
Oh, brilliant. And we had the former chairman on a few weeks ago who basically took the club into administration and did lots of things that weren't right, etc. And I knew I was going to get a load of flack from it. But he made Candy Crush. That was how he made his kind of millions. So that's why he was on the show. But I was like, well, we're also going to talk about Derby County as well. And like the comments that I got on X and Twitter from these people, like by the end of it, I was just like, it's just like so unbelievably rude that like it's just. I just find it sort of slightly mind-blowing a little bit, really. But yeah, like you say, it's kind of like maybe it's the valve that people have to sort of take the stress out of. But yeah, it's kind of, it's strange.
It's also another reason why I know how the social space works. I know that there's a platform for every type of conversation. So this level of depth that I go into in this podcast or on the Bottleneck podcast or wherever, or on stage, I don't do that with my content because I know that people just headline read. So I just meet you at headline level. Right?
Yeah.
I hit you at a quote level. I hit you with a one message level. You get your one key message, stops you scrolling. You get your insight. You feel smarter. You can take that insight to somebody else. I'm a vehicle to make you feel smarter or to get you a new idea that you can take and do something with. But it's only when you're given a platform where people have a mindset to be able to sit with things and actually understand things and get to the core of things. That's when you go to like long form, like YouTube. Like the mindset you go into a platform with actually dictates how you consume the information. If you're on TikTok, you're trying to get that short burst.
Yeah.
When you're on LinkedIn, you're trying to get that short burst. So if you're interrupted with long form, very depth content, even though you did the job of creating the work, you just put it in the wrong audience. It's like trying to play rock and roll in a library, right? Like the context matters, right? So that is why I've been very comfortable in a podcast format or in a speaking format to really decode and be very like more truthful with my perspective on things, right? Because then you actually have people that are in a mindset to consume and understand and learn. Therefore, I give them the contents according to that.
So I think this cultural relevance piece is like one of the most like important things, particularly kind of like in a more AI world. How do you, when you're hiring, like how do you test for it? How do you try and sort of, because it seems a very difficult thing to sort of.
So I'll tell you, I'll give you two frameworks, right? One is just like for hiring in general, and the other specifically for the space, right? So, as I mentioned, I'm an Arsenal fan, right? And I think that the journey that Mikel Arteta, the Arsenal manager, has been on is a more truer reflection of how life actually works, as opposed to what happened with Liverpool with Arne Slot, right? So what happened with Liverpool is you get a new manager and they win the league, right? And then the next year, they're tanking, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens with most startups. You start well. So my co-founder, Michael, has this theory that like for however long you've been in business, you're likely to stay in business for the equivalent amount of time, right? So if you're in business for 1 year, you're likely to be there for 2. If you're there for 3, you're likely to be there for 6, right? So the goal is to, if you want to be a 100-year brand, you have to get to 50 so that you can make it to 100, right? So you have to just go by go. So what Mikel Arteta taught me is that it took 5 years just to be stable enough to actually win the Prem.
Yeah.
And you get ever so close, and then this happens, and the environment's changed, and this happens. But then really it's a chapter building exercise. If we were lucky enough to win it early, it would have been a fluke. That's not how the world works, right?
Yeah.
So, and he has a philosophy about the mindset of the players that he recruited, right? Which I realized, oh, that's a really interesting framework. And I labeled it as the 3 A's, right? You talked about skill, I call it ability, right? So do you believe that the person has the ability to do the work at hand, right? Now, doing it perfectly or not, that's you can evaluate that, you can work on that, etc. But then do you believe that that person is inclined to do the thing that you want them to do? The next is agency, right? Or autonomy. How much hand-holding do they need, right? Do they need complete hand-holding, or once I tell them the problem, they can do it themselves? Can they even find the problem before I do, right? The greater agency, the more proactive, the more senior, the more I get out the way, right? And then the last one is attitude, right? Now, I can deal with somebody that has less skill. You can train that. I can deal with somebody that doesn't have that much agency, and you can build that over time. Your salary will determine that, but you can manage that. But attitude is non-negotiable, right? If you don't have an attitude to learn, an attitude to be a team player, an attitude to obsess over, like I'm a very obsessed individual. Like I like to work. Like I enjoy my work. I was able to understand early on what Jay-Z says, that everybody has a genius level talent. Everybody does. You just have to quiet the noise and listen, right? And usually the answer's within, and you've probably just ignored it, right?
Yeah.
And once I understood what I was good at, I just went ferociously. Instead of trying to like staying at Gymshark and saying, well, here's what I want to do. Gymshark should let me do more of that. So I'm just going to create my own canvas. It's harder. But if you want to have the audacity to create your own world, you have to take that leap and then build it that way, right? But you need people that have the natural, and you should always build a business that you can understand, right? With people that align with the energy that you're looking to drive. But you should, like people that are not naturally curious, that are not, I like to say that people that don't have an immigrant mentality will find it very difficult to work at Butterfly Effect, right? Because it requires you to start from a blank canvas, right? It requires you to be okay with not having all the information.
Yeah.
It requires you with asking questions and looking dumb and wanting to learn and failing, right? It's not a where you're from thing, it's just the attitude of having a blank canvas and being able to do a lot with very little. If you need everything to be proper, and I just know it's not going to work for you, right? Because that's just not the way that we operate, right? Me and my co-founder Michael were both immigrants, and we both like Arsenal. It's not saying that if you don't like Arsenal, you can't work for us. It's saying that there's a certain level in the style that we work. It's all about playing beautifully. We care about craftsmanship. We care about coherence. We care about passing the ball and making the other person look great. Our whole thing is to try to get our client promoted, to make them look like the star. That's our whole ethos, right? And you have to align with that, right? And then that's just like in general how we hire. And then whatever that means to you, whatever attitudes mean to you, and that should be like, you can't train attitude. Somebody else, that's an internal work that somebody has to do. I can't teach somebody to be motivated. They have to be motivated, right? The other bit, when it comes to like social itself, there's almost like 4 levels to it, right? So when you talk about ability, right, then that's skill, right? There's 4 levels. First is creativity. I think creativity is actually the bare minimum. A lot of people think that just because you create content, you can run a whole department. No. I think that creativity is the bare minimum, right? Because really anybody can be creative. It just depends on your reference points, right? So it's all about how many reference points can you apply from a different source and add it to another. That's basically what creativity is, right? And it's just like a life period of references that you're able to draw from one area and put it into another and then make something new. That's all it is, right? And then add a bit of flavor to it. The next level is all about platform mechanics, right? And the way these platforms are orchestrated and what they reward and what matters to them. How many platforms have you been exposed to, right? So, like, if you know anything about Chinese social platforms, they kind of mirror the same makeup as the ones on the West. So, like, you have Little Red Book, that's kind of like Instagram. You have Weibo, that's kind of like X, right? You have WeChat, that's like WhatsApp, but on steroids, right? But once you understand how the channels work, like Douyin and TikTok, you know what you need to do, right? So that's the different. That's the second tier. Then you go to psychology. Do you understand people? And I always often say that social and community is behavioral psychology at scale, right? That's what it is, because you're saying, I'm going to do this, that's going to trigger this behavior, that's going to trigger this, and that's going to trigger this perception. That's not creativity, that's psychology, right?
Yeah.
And that's why whenever I would it would take me like 30 seconds to know whether, or 20 seconds, probably even 10, to know when I'm looking at a CV, whether a junior person with no experience is likely to work really great for us, is whether they did psychology or not. If I go through and see psychology, I'm like, okay, different pile. Because what we're doing is it's psychology. It's about understanding people, right? Yeah. And then the next one is social dynamics, right? There's a reason why Ryanair can get away with things that British Airways can't, right? Because they understand the role that they play in culture. They understand the role that they play for their audience. They understand who their audience is. But then if you know all the different layers, but you can only apply that to one brand in one scenario, that's your cap.
Yeah.
But then if you can method act, right, and say, okay, I am the Nando's account, and I can embody the Nando's audience. And then equally at the same time, I am McDonald's account, and I know what the McDonald's audience is about. And then equally the next time, I can do that. So when I'm speaking to one of our clients, I am them. I can go into depth and understand exactly what it is that they need me to do. The feeling, it just comes with time.
And how have you found that transition of going of, being Gymshark to now working with all these different brands?
So do you know what? The idea, I'm not like, I'm probably one of the least like corporate CEOs around, right? I've actually been battling with the idea of whether I should be the CEO for Butterfly Effect for very long. And I don't think I will be, because me and Michael are building a much bigger business and Butterfly Effect is within that. But effectively, Ben, if it wasn't for Ben, I don't think I would have taken the leap to be a more EQ CEO, right?
That's interesting.
So he is one, right? And then he inspired me to believe that I can do it myself. I can have my own style. Just get the operators around me, right? So the reason why is because I always had ideas inspired from spaces outside of fitness that we were never going to use, right? That's why I started giving away an idea a day. But then also that's why we always had references from other places, right? So
Yeah.
I would watch a flower company do something and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. Let's bring it here. What's our version of it? How do we Gymshark it, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a producer that samples music, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you're a hip hop producer, but you're taking music from like jazz, you're taking music from these spaces, and you're fusing it all together, right? The canvas of bodybuilding and fitness, I wouldn't say that it was a limiter, but I felt that I could challenge myself to apply that to different canvases. And I watched Wu-Tang, right? I watched, there's a Wu-Tang film, and I was like, well, I want to be the RZA. I have a sound, right? Can I work with different artists? Like Pharrell Williams can work with Gwen Stefani and work with Snoop Dogg, right? And still produce a hit. I'm like, well, if you want to be the best at your craft, you can't be one-dimensional. Yes, you have the essence that make you who you are. Community is the DNA, right? But how you connect with communities and be the bridge between the brand and the individual, you have to listen to the person. You have to understand the brand and understand the individual and then figure out what those bridges are. And that's it's not really about being creative. It's more like being a scientist, right?
Yeah.
So I think the best way to describe it is how Pharrell Williams approaches music is how I approach this. I listen to the artist, I embody the artist, I listen to the audience, I hear what they need, and I become the bridge.
It's really interesting. What did Ben say when you were like, I want to go?
You may have noticed we've been doing something different recently. From our budget live stream to the episode where I sat down with the producers, we've been experimenting with new formats that you've been asking for. We want to do much more of that in 2026, but truthfully, those episodes don't quite perform like some of our blockbuster ones with prime ministers or business titans, even though amongst our core fans, they're often your favourite. So in early 2026, we're giving you the opportunity to be even more involved with the show, and we are launching Jimmy's Jobs Backstage. The waitlist is now open, and if you pledge your annual support, we'll etch your name into our brand new studio. We'll be able to bring you more into the show by listening to your guest suggestions and your questions that you have for them. And there'll also be more live shows next year which you'll get early access to. If you or someone you know are a fan of this new way of doing media, check out the show notes to see how to join us backstage, or give it as a Christmas gift. And hey, you might even be able to put it through your learning and development budget. See you backstage. Now back to the episode.
What did Ben say when you were like, I want to go? Because you've got this almost dream job for lots of people, head of socials at one of the biggest social brands in the world.
So I think everybody in the company didn't understand but Ben, because he's a founder, right? if I had left Gymshark because I wanted to work at Nike or something like that, he would be like, well, you don't, like, well, I knew that I couldn't do it. I spent the best part of like nearly 10 years building Nike up as a nemesis, right?
Yeah.
Like if you brought any references of any of our competitors to any brainstorm, I was like, fuck that, right? like it's us against everybody. Like we had the audacity to believe that we can be mentioned in the same breath as some of the biggest companies in the world. Like being like going up in like, name me any industry that's more competitive and harder to crack than the fitness world. If I ask people to name 5 sports brands, right? No, like 5. It's always the same 5: Nike, Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, and Reebok, maybe.
Yeah.
Right, and then now you have Gymshark. To be able to even be in that mix, right, is so difficult because there's so many brands, right?
Yeah.
So we picked the hardest space to go. So you had to really like be focused on like I couldn't work for any other brand. I said I couldn't work for another brand. So the only reason why I would leave was to build my own world, right? And he understood that. And I had the opportunity to do that, right? And that's why, even though our podcast has like 700 subscribers, right? Ben's like one of our first guests, right?
Yeah,
Because we still have that connection, and he knows that I did it for the right reason, right? And even till this day, I struggle. We haven't really worked with any fitness brands.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
We haven't worked because, and if we have, I'm not involved in it. I can't be, right? Like I've spent too much time. I'm too Gymshark, right?
Yeah.
I'm too Gymshark. So, but the essence has been taught to the team so that they can still be able to do great work. But hey,
That's interesting. Why do you call it butterfly effect?
so I called it. I always often say that the answer to our destiny is always hiding in plain sight, right? And I seem to really like this song called Butterfly Effect by Travis Scott, right?
Yeah.
It kept popping up in my Spotify Wrapped for like 4 years, right? But I didn't know what the hell it meant. I know I love the song, I love the vibe, etc., but I didn't actually know what butterfly effect as a theory actually meant. And then I heard about like chaos theory, right? And also the fact that to be able to create chaos, or the flap of a butterfly wing leads to a tornado. So that means that small things become big things. But then I realized that that's always been my philosophy of life, right?
Yeah.
Like it all starts with the momentum, right? So it's like everybody thinks about this and Ben talked about the fact that if he had tried to build Gymshark to be a £1 billion brand, he would never have done it. It all starts with the momentum, right? It's like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and then it compounds, and it compounds, and it compounds,
Yeah.
and then you create chaos, right? So really, when you ask people, with Butterfly Effect, the agency, what do we sell? We sell 3 things, right? We sell direction, execution, and amplification, right? But the reason why direction is super important because it creates momentum, right? So we have a North Star of where we want to go. We align all the key decision makers on that. So we do not work unless we have all the key decision makers in a room. Because we're not an agency, we're a growth company.
Yeah.
Right? Marketing is a recipe of growth, but it's not the only factor, right? So Ellie Norman from Formula E, love them. The one we work with them, and she's phenomenal. And one of the things that she says is that a brand exists to do 3 things: build fame, be easy to find and buy, and be hard to leave, right? And that's not just the job of a marketing department. That's a business role, right? So we try to understand, first and foremost, do you have a direction problem? Do you have a execution problem? Or do you have an amplification problem? And then based on the 3 questions that I just mentioned, where do we start first, right? Or how do we approach things? And are we aligned on that?
Yeah.
And then how do we build momentum? We usually tend to work on a 3-year growth plan. It's like, we want to get here by year 3. No, we want to get here forever. So what's the reason why everybody shows up every day? Now, what does that look like in 3 years' time? And then we work backwards from there. And then the first 90 days are crucial to momentum, right? Let's start to build momentum because we're offering an idea or solutions that are new. And from the moment you say yes, we're on the clock. So everything we suggest at the start is for you to get those wins, right? And to know that we're going in the right direction. Because the CFO just sees, we've spent this, what did we get, right?
Yeah.
So we're on the clock. But then once you get past the 90 days, everyone's like, we get it,
Yeah.
right? Okay, now let's invest more. Let's do this. Let's try this. So those periods are really, really crucial, right? Because everyone thinks that we're selling creativity. No, we're selling momentum, right? Like we're there to give you momentum towards the right direction. And we're there to help you. We'll do it first, and then we help you in-house it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an in-house guy. I don't believe like agencies are still in business because a lot of people need hand-holding. Our goal is to do it, but teach you along the way so that we can then just be your coach. It's effectively how we work with people.
It's really interesting. Let's talk a bit about personal brand,
Yeah.
right? Because I think it's like we've talked quite a lot about brands at the start, but then we've obviously talked a lot about Ben and Noel as well.
Yeah.
Like, why? And it's also interesting in terms of politics as well, because actually politicians are some of the first people that ever really had to have like personal brands, right? But so what is the importance and why is personal brand growing? Like one of my favorite stats is that Tim Cook has more followers than Apple does,
Yeah.
right? And he didn't even found the company, right?
It's because of trust.
Because people trust individuals.
Well, I think the metric of trust changes over time, right? And first, so Michael, he's a low-key philosopher, right? My co-founder. And he basically says, in order to build trust, people must know you, and then they must like you, and then you have the opportunity to earn trust, right?
Yeah.
So in a world where IQ is being democratized because of AI, people need a new compass of trust. First, you could hide behind ads because not everybody could afford to buy ads or to reach scale. And for you to be able to do that, you must be good.
Yeah.
You must be quality because you have the money to do it. And then as that became, like people went to socials, the people that were first were very authentic and honest because they had no money.
Yeah.
And that's why still till this day, the biggest creators are the originators, right? Because they've understood that it's about honesty. It's about trust, right? And that's why I find it very weird that everybody sees AI as an opportunity to get rid of creators. I'm like, it's not. If anything, you're going to get people off of the social platforms. Because people talk about, for example, influencer marketing. It always existed. What's Michael Jackson with Pepsi? What's Michael Jordan with Nike? That's all influencer marketing. Everyone marketers, we just like to coin things in ways that we understand to make us feel like we're fresh and original, but it's always existed, right? It's a person of influence is there to demonstrate trust because you have an affiliation with a person, not an affiliation with an object, right?
Yeah.
But first, what people would do is they would have influencers and use influencer faces to embody the perception and the values of the brand. But then when influencers just started taking the biggest cash check, people realized, well, that's flawed. We need something else to demonstrate. Well, a business is making statements that they believe in this. Who is the person running it?
Yeah.
Right? Why are you hiding? Because at the end of the day, the difference in quality is few and far between with modern day technology. You can't really tell me that one product is definitely better than the other. What's the difference?
Yeah.
The reason why it exists. Who I'm buying from. What story do they represent? Can I relate to them? Do I trust them? Right? That is why it's happening. But again, people are doing it because we're being sheep. Because we're like, well, it's the flavor of the month. But when you have to understand the true essence of why it exists, right?
Yeah.
It is there to build trust, not to create content, but to build trust. And the content is a documentation of the actions that you embody as a business.
Yeah. I mean, that is it's really good. how have you found, and being trust and authentic, LinkedIn are powering this episode, but like, how have you found using LinkedIn as a platform for this stuff as well? Because it's kind of made this transition a little bit into a sort of, it wasn't sort of perhaps 5 or 6 years ago so much of a social platform, but like now it is, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, so I always say that I wasn't attractive enough for Instagram, I wasn't creative enough for TikTok, but I was nerdy enough for LinkedIn, right? It's where my people are at, right? People that want to speak in logic and ideas and depth. So I don't think that it being used as a creative platform was what they wanted. I don't think that's what they wanted. I often say that I feel like I'm Stone Cold Steve Austin in the LinkedIn world. I feel like they love me, but they don't, because I kind of ruined it, right? Like Steph Curry, right? Like, because I remember when, so what happened was I was making this transition to becoming, from being an executor to a head of department, right? But I still wanted to get involved in the creative process because I love to create. But then I realized that I had to work through the team, right? So, but I had to get my creative release somewhere else. And I was talking to Ben about this, and he just started his YouTube. And he was like, well, I create on YouTube because I can still get involved with my own creativity. And it was like, well, you should find that for yourself. And I was like, well, LinkedIn, that's where you guys found me. I'll go on there. And then I looked at LinkedIn. I was like, oh, yeah, who's doing great stuff? And I realized that every piece of content was, I'm excited to announce this. My company's done that. And everyone's just talking about how good they are, right? No one's giving anything, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give away an idea a day, right? And also, I'm going to give a funny meme. No one posted memes on LinkedIn back in 2018 and 17. Like, everyone was too serious. Right? Everyone was just like took themselves way too seriously. Mines were memes about ideas that I had. Was like people said that my return on word used on posts was phenomenal, right? It's like a word and a phrase and a meme, right? And we're getting crazy. Like my LinkedIn gets between 2 to 12 million impressions a week. Like it was insane. But what happened was when the pandemic happened, people had more time. And AI started to come into play. And what happened was now you started to have like just an influx of I was never seeing myself as a creator.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think that LinkedIn was a platform to create. But then all of a sudden there's like favicon lists and there's like all these things happening. And there's now a lot of noise on the platform. But even though I say that, only 1% of the people on the platform actually create.
Yeah.
Right? So it's still very early, considering there's 1 billion people on the platform, right?
Yeah.
It's because a lot of people haven't been able to crack that it's not TikTok, right? The reason why I say that is because who you are and your reputation and your background actually matters.
Yeah.
You can't just, at the start you can put a few posts out, get a few likes, but then if you're talking about building community and then you look at your job, your background, and you've never built community, then your thesis is fundamentally flawed, right?
Yeah.
It's the only platform where what you've done also matters. Because you can't announce yourself and say, I built a company for 5 million. No, we can see that.
Yeah.
Now, what else have you got to tell me, right? So it's one of those platforms where you do, and then you story tell and talk about what you've done.
Yeah.
And people will trust your track record. It's like your visual CV. You have to actually have done the stuff that you're talking about. And people think that it's a content play. No, it's a lived experience play.
Yeah.
Right? And if you do have ideas, it has to be backed up by your credibility. So you have to do more stuff.
How do you think, it's interesting, one of the things that I'm always sort of slightly pushing when I go into schools and universities and stuff is saying that people should be on LinkedIn, right? Yeah. Like, I think it's quite important. Like, you can be liking, commenting, you can be engaging. So, hey, did you get the job with Gymshark through LinkedIn, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got every job that I've ever had through LinkedIn.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And every brand deal I've ever had was because of LinkedIn.
Oh, right.
So LinkedIn, when it comes to like, Every client we've ever got is usually because of LinkedIn. Right? So LinkedIn has been a fundamental. The ROI on LinkedIn for me as an individual is probably the greatest for anybody ever on LinkedIn. Right?
But to that lived experience point, right? Like if you're a student or early on in your career, what could you be doing on LinkedIn?
Okay, so I think this whole fake it till you make it approach does not fly over there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fly over there. It's like I'm pretending to be this millionaire with this that doesn't work. Like if you're a student and you're creative, your attitude is what will get you the role, right?
Yeah.
And if you can demonstrate the learning experience that you're going through and you're sharing, you're being who you are. I'm a student and this is what I've learned. And this is what I'm going through. Here's who I spoke to. Here's what I've done. Here's what I built. Here's how I failed, right? Your attitude shines through,
Yeah.
right? You're not selling your content. You're selling your attitude. You're selling your curiosity. You're selling your fire. You're selling your consistency. You're selling your ability to create. You're giving your ideas away to the people that want to employ you, right? And because people tend to gravitate to people that remind them of themselves, right? It's a dramatic demonstration. The best form of marketing is a dramatic demonstration. And you don't have to amass an audience of 1 million people to make an impact. Now, even more of a bigger opportunity, I think that even LinkedIn doesn't recognize the categorical and monumentous role that it plays in shaping the future of culture and the work way. Like if you look at what Mark Zuckerberg did with spending $100 million on an AI expert to lead that division, I foresee LinkedIn. I don't think there's going to be so long until you see Salesforce finding the biggest sales creator that has 500,000 like senior sales leaders and acquiring them for like 20 million. I don't see that because that's your audience.
Yeah.
Like if you have influence over the C-suite of the people that you're trying to get in front of for your sales team, why don't you just get the best creator?
Yeah.
Get them to become your chief community officer, and they story tell that perspective of the business.
Yeah. The rise of the B2B influencer, I think, is like...
But people think it's a content play. It's not a content play. It's an influence play. LinkedIn is great at content, but that's just opening the door. That's depth. That's trust, right?
Yeah.
To amass an audience on LinkedIn, you need trust. And what you're doing is you're basically buying IP and you're buying trust. And if you give the person a canvas in your brand, it changes the whole perspective of your brand.
Yeah.
Like we don't post anything on Butterfly Effects LinkedIn right now. We're going to next year. We have 7,000 followers.
Yeah.
Just because it's attached to me, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you say, we're going to Gymshark LinkedIn and create an ambassador program with the biggest creators on LinkedIn that are within a particular cohort, and we're going to work with them as salaried employees over time, why this is important is because, especially in the B2B space, a young person that can't get a job, like Ben Francis, like in a corporate, will see the Gymshark playbook and apply it here.
Yeah.
You can like how many clients does a B2B company, a high-ticket B2B company, need to make £1 million? 5, 10?
Yeah.
And you have 500,000 followers.
Yeah. But I think socials has done that. Like, it's kind of warped our brains on numbers a bit because I get people, younger podcasters starting out and whatever, and they're like, oh, I've only got 40, 50 listeners or whatever. And I'm like, if you think of that as a room above a pub, like it's actually quite a full room. Like,
but the thing about those metrics is that 1 million views on TikTok is doom scrolling,
yeah.
right? LinkedIn, one view could be the CEO of Coca-Cola.
Yeah, totally.
And not only, because they could also be on the TikTok view, but the mindset they bring in to LinkedIn is that I am the CEO of Coca-Cola. So what I am looking for is to give me an edge as the CEO of Coca-Cola. So it's not just the person, it's the mindset they're bringing into consuming your content,
Yeah.
right? That people do not take into consideration, right? Like even look at the clients we worked with. We worked with Netflix, Bumble, Cheesecake Factory, McDonald's, WeTransfer, We worked with Square. We worked with, like, we have no right to be working with these businesses as a 3-year-old business. No, think about it. That's all digital. We don't go to conferences.
Yeah.
We don't go to networking events. How the hell are we getting in front of the leadership team of these businesses?
Yeah.
It's because of LinkedIn, because of trust, right? Because of being able to put our work out there and people seeing what we're doing. We're getting inbound, right? Now, somebody told me, Alf, you never have to network again. I'm like, I know, but I choose to go and speak in places because I'm just a creator and I'm passionate about what I do, right? Like, but if you think about it, once people start to realize that all I need to do is win the trust of 3 businesses, if I charge them $2,000 each, that's more than my take home.
Yeah. Completely right.
Right? Like it's like that's what that's why I'm saying the fundamental role and the bridge that it's creating and the role that it will have in society in the next 5 to 10 years, people are massively underestimating it. They think it's a content play. No, it will change organizations overnight once it clicks.
What else do you see happening in the social space over the next 5 to 10 years?
I see that those that create a bridge between IRL and URL will win. So if you can create a bridge between in real life and digital and be that bridge, that will win. Because at the end of the day, people don't trust anything anymore. Everything is like, is this AI? Is this not AI? Apple just did an ad about the process of creating the ad
Yeah.
to demonstrate that it's not AI and that they're doing this in real life. That's become a marketing hook.
Yeah.
So why does Gymshark have a store in Regent Street? Are they doing it to sell more products or are they doing it to demonstrate that they're real?
Yeah.
Right? Like the Gymshark store is more of a competitor to Madame Tussauds than is it a competitor to the other store that sells the same thing as them. It's a place where people connect. And also, brands that win are those that are doing things that the government should be doing. Instead of picking fights with each other, the brands that win are those that are saying, how do we bring people together?
Yeah.
That's why community works.
That is something that we should have a whole separate conversation on government and community, because that is that's super. Yeah, we'll have to get you back and do it at some point. We'll do it with Rory. Let's do some quick fires.
Yeah.
What did your parents do?
So my dad was a doctor. He's just recently retired. My mom's an entrepreneur.
Oh, what was her business in?
No, she's just had stores. She had this hair salon. She sold clothes. Like, my mom has never been a person to work like for anybody. She's just a out the box kind of person. And I thought I was going to be a doctor like my dad. Then I realized I was shit at science. And I realized that I'm actually a lot more like my mom. But I do embody the structural thinking of my dad. So I'm a hybrid.
You play squash.
Yeah.
Why?
You did your research. That's crazy. Because I thought I was going to be the Tiger Woods of squash. Because so I used to play football, but football is very political, right? It's like, I think at the time when I was younger, the coach was like, the new coach that came knew my dad. And I never wanted to be like the Nepo person. I was like, oh no, you're getting picked. I was like, I'm going to pick a sport where I'm good. Everything I do is with other people. Every business I've built is with other people. I was like, I need to do something that's like me on my own, right? And I picked squash and I loved it, right? And it was great. And I would go, when I moved to the UK, everybody that played it was like old. And I was like 18, right? And I thought that was the thing I was going to do. But then I actually started even coaching the university squash team. And then I was like, I never touched alcohol until I was 19. Right? Because I thought I was going to be a professional squash player. And then creativity and community and Steve Jobs and all that took me a different direction.
What did you study at university?
Marketing management.
What did you learn from it?
That the 4 Ps no longer exist.
What are the 4 Ps?
Product, place, price, promotion. Ironically, I already understood that although that made sense in a 2D world, in the world that we're going into, it's not making sense because place doesn't have to be a physical space. It's a place where we occupy our time and attention, right? And that's why I much prefer the build fame, be easy to find and buy from, be hard to leave. That's way more universal. That's way more timeless. And then it's borderless, right? So whilst the 4 Ps did form as a great foundation, when you break it apart, not everybody agrees on everything. Whereas with the build fame, be easy to find and buy and hard to leave, that is just universal. That's just facts, right? But then it also doesn't put marketing as a separate department. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It unifies everybody because you can ask everybody, how do we build fame today? And your marketing can be done by, you can build fame by how you build your product, by where you source your products, by by listening to your audience and doing something in reaction to that, by saying, well, we're not going to do this when our competitors are doing this, by not opening on Sundays with Chick-fil-A, right? Like everything now becomes up for grabs because everything is marketing, because everything is perception, right? There's 2 camps of a business I like to think, because I like to simplify things. There's 2 departments. It's how you make money and the perceptions associated with the way that you make money, right? One allows you to make money today. The other allows you to make money forever.
Yeah.
It's what it is, right? Like, and once you realize that that's all it is, you realize you're all in the same team, right?
True. Would you still go to university today, do you think?
I would. So we were just talking about earlier about the fact that how do I feel about becoming a founder, right? I've now have the gear that if I feel like something is important but broken, I just build my own, right?
Yeah.
So I would if it worked within this confinement, because I believe that I think universities and their role should change, right? I think educational systems should change. I think that the role that they now play is one of connection, community, and just learning life skills, right? Because now what you see with young people is a lot of them are very smart, but they can't speak to somebody,
Yeah.
right? They can't connect with somebody. They can't find rapport with people. I think you can get IQ on a computer. You can get an answer to everything on the computer, but you still have to experience life. And I think that universities that start to build people to be better at life are the ones that are going to do really well. How do you communicate with people? How do you connect with people? How do you use your creative gifts? How do you get people to follow your mission? Those are the intangibles that I think that are still worth something. You can't teach somebody about knowledge recall.
Yeah.
No one's going to pay 30, 40, 100 grand for learning how to recall.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to learn for life-changing experiences and making like contacts and knowing how to be a better person and understanding how to navigate in a pressurized like world that we're living in. Those are the things that are going to be really important.
What was the first thing you did for money?
Hand out flyers on Broad Street in Birmingham for Gatecrasher Birmingham.
I was at the uni at Brum, so like, there's a good chance you may have handed me one of those.
For my first ever job.
When?
That's where I met my co-founder.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and then I went Gymshark route. He went social chain with Stephen Bartlett route.
Ah.
Yeah, and then we reconnected.
Yeah. Creating the powerhouse that is. Thierry Henry or Ian Wright?
Thierry. I love Uncle Ian. so Uncle Ian. So my dad became because everyone's like, well, why do you support Arsenal? Why don't you support Aston Villa? First and foremost, I didn't even know Aston Villa was in Birmingham until I moved here, right? But secondly, like Ian Wright made my dad fall in love with Arsenal. I was still up for keeps. Like I'm like, cool, Ian's cool, but I was like, David Beckham's going about, Michael Owens, Thierry Henry just had too much sauce, man. And I loved the French team. I
That,
loved
yeah.
Zidane. I loved Zidane. I loved Henry. I loved Petit. I loved Vieira. Like, and then most of them played for Arsenal. And then Arsene Wenger was French. And then like I just loved the ethos. I think that Arsenal was the first like team to like field 9 black players, right?
Yeah.
Like I spoke French in an English speaking like I just felt seen by what Henry represented.
So what age were you when you got here then?
14,
14.
Henry number.
Um,
Symbolic.
what car do you drive?
I now don't drive. I'm a pedestrian.
How are you?
Yeah, the last car I drove was a Range Rover, and then I realized that I don't need it. I think the story there was I lived all my life trying to attach my self-worth to things that are outside of myself.
Yeah.
It was only when I felt connected to myself that I realized that I didn't need the external things, that I realized that I can just walk as I am.
Yeah.
And now it's just a practical thing. I'm just like, why do I need a car?
Fair enough. Elf, thanks so much for coming on Jimmy's Jobs of the Future. It's been an absolute masterclass, people. I can't wait to send it. I was thinking of all the people that need to listen to this as I was going, like, as you were saying some of that stuff. And I've been scribbling notes. I've never heard the IRL to URL before. And ability, agency, and attitude. I love that. That's brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.